Tottenham Hotspur have never won a competitive match against Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund or Apoel. To dare is to do. This is your E-Spurs Extra Time Special.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, Tottenham!
Hello guys, welcome back to a very special E-Spurs Extra Time where we discuss the fallout to Tottenham Hotspur's Champions League group stage draw. You can of course follow us across all the usual social media platforms. We are on Twitter and Instagram at E_Spurs. We are also on Facebook, facebook.com/eSpurs page. You can also catch us on YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. And for all of the links to all eSpurs platforms, you can head to our website of www.e-spurs.com. On the eSpurs podcast tonight, delighted to be talking about Tottenham Hotspur's Champions League group stage draw. Joining us tonight, pleased to say we've got Jason back on the show. Jace, how are you doing?
Really good, mate, and it's good to be on a night where we drew Real Madrid and Barnsley on the same day.
You had to slip that one in there, Jace. And also delighted to say joining Jason tonight is massive Tottenham fan and friend to the show, Andy joins us. Andy, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks, Rick. Good to be back on. Good to speak to you lads again, and plenty to talk about. So yeah, all good, mate. Yeah,
been a while. Delighted to have you back, Andy. Really, really delighted. So, where to start? Jace, gonna have to come over to you. What a day it's been. Obviously, we've had the Barnsley draw 4 a.m. on the Thursday morning. We then fast forward and have Tottenham draw the likes of Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Apoel in the Champions League. A tough group, Jace, but you have to beat the teams like this if you want to progress in Europe.
Well, exactly, and the benefit is, mate, you knock them out at this stage, you get an easier route to the final. So that's the way you have to look at it. No, I mean, we said on the Chelsea podcast that Real Madrid was the one draw that I was really hoping for. I don't think there is a bigger side in the world than them. And you know, last year we all thought we had a nice easy group, and it almost felt like a Europa League group than a Champions League group. But this year we've got a couple of those bigger teams, and you know that's what you want. Wembley buzzing, and you know it's going to be certainly two fantastic nights at Wembley, and just the type of draw that I wanted us to get.
Yeah, very, very exciting on paper. Coming over to you, Andy. In terms of best case, worst case scenario before the draw, people would have maybe argued the likes of maybe Moscow, Porto, carrier bag as what we could argue to be a favourable draw, and then the likes of maybe a Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Feyenoord. How it's panned out, how are you feeling about it, And?
Yeah, you know, I was reading through social media before the draw, and there were sort of mixed views on what people would like in terms of the draw. Some saying they'd like a bit of an easier draw, some saying they want the big teams. But I've got to echo exactly what Jason said there, really, to be honest. I mean, playing European football is all about these big nights in Europe. You know, it's all about playing the likes of the Real Madrids, the Borussia Dortmunds. So I think we've got some cracking nights in store to come this season. Huge games, and I mean some great trips as well. You look at the stadiums that we're going to be playing at, 80,000 both Real Madrid and Dortmund, back at Wembley in front of 90,000. So you know, you're looking at pretty much every one of our Champions League games this season, bar one, will be playing in front of 80,000 plus. You know, if you're a player and you can't get up for these games, then you know you shouldn't be playing, really, to be honest. It's a fantastic draw, I think. There were some other cracking fixtures in there. You know, Barcelona, Juventus playing each other. I think it was a really good draw. We were just speaking off air there about the draw. Some cracking ties. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to a big season of European football and some really exciting nights.
Yeah, very exciting nights, as you say. And coming back around to you, Jace, I think a lot of people, again, last year looked at last year's group as a very winnable group, the likes of the teams we had. This time around, I think, again, there will be that little bit of apprehension going into it. But, again, you have to embrace this, don't you? This is what we're at the top table for, to play the best teams. And you rightly mentioned there, Jace, before, that if we want to obviously progress in this competition, we're going to have to face these teams sooner rather than later anyway.
Of course you are. I can't think why anyone wouldn't be excited about the draw. You know, I mean, the phrase "glory, glory nights" has been used so much about us in the past, and you don't have glory, glory nights against Bayer Leverkusens and teams like that. You know, glory, glory nights do come against the bigger sides, and you know, I wasn't there to see Madrid last time, but my first memory of Madrid is going back to 1985, standing on the shelf when Real Madrid came to White Hart Lane, and I think that night they became the first team ever to win a European tie at White Hart Lane, first foreign team to win a European tie, and from that night onwards, I've been a kind of Real Madrid fan. So no, it was the perfect draw for me, and Dortmund we owe. You know, we had a painful experience, of course, 2 years ago with Dortmund when we had a midfield with likes of Tom Cowell and Ryan Mason in it for that away leg, and we were all disappointed that night. So hopefully we'll take a proper side there this time and have a proper game with them as well.
Fingers crossed. And coming back around to you, Andy, you mentioned earlier about the fact that, you know, getting the players up for it. There may be that argument last year that no, we didn't face the top teams, although we were playing at the top table. But this time around, playing the likes of Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, I mean, you have to say that if the lads can't be up for this, then really, I don't know what they can be up for.
Well, exactly. And I mean, again, we were speaking just now, and there's, you know, I'm sure there's a few players there, and perhaps even, you know, the one or two that maybe want out, and they're looking at that draw today, and suddenly they're sitting there thinking, you know, why would I want out when I've got, you know, a huge season ahead, Champions League games against arguably the biggest club in the world, Borussia Dortmund. That's going to be a fantastic atmosphere over there in front of the big yellow wall. You know, cracking season to come. Don't get me wrong, last season, you know, first season back in the Champions League, everybody was excited about that, and you know, we all watched the games and went through the eventual agony of dropping out of it. But this season, really, I mean, if any Spurs fan watching that draw today has to be excited about playing the Real Madrid, the Borussia Dortmunds, and the Apoel game is a really interesting one as well, because, you know, you've then got a chance, no disrespect to Apoel, but you've then got a chance to get, in a second game, 3 points in the bag. And the Dortmund game, though, the Dortmund game's key for me, because if we can get off the mark in that one at home, then that really sets us up well, I think, for the rest of the Champions League campaign. Apoel next, and then there's a real chance to get on a bit of a roll. But that's looking ahead, and, you know, it's just where we are now, Champions League drawn against the biggest club in the world, in Dortmund, what we watch football for, and it's what they play for. So, you know, certainly whets the appetite.
Yeah, very much does so. And coming to you, Jace, I mean, Andy mentions there about the fact that it's our second season in the Champions League consecutively. Again, we're going to have the Wembley factor here. So much has been spoken about it. We've discussed it on the Chelsea podcast, you know, endlessly. But I just want to ask you the question. Do you feel, obviously, another year into it, we may be better suited for it at Wembley? We know what to expect, we know what we have to do, and we know we've got to generate an atmosphere. For these games, though, I think you just don't need to, Jace. The fixture, the glamour of it, is there for itself. There shouldn't need to be any real need to raise anyone for it.
You know, the atmosphere should be there by the nature of the fixtures, and Dortmund as well. They'll bring a full bash to Wembley, and they always make a lot of noise. So, you know, I'm sure we'll have really atmospheric nights. I think they will be a lot more prepared for it this year, but, you know, it's certainly a group that will test the depth of the squad out, particularly when you look at fixtures either side of some of those games. So as much as we're prepared for it, you know, let's face up to facts. It's going to be an incredibly tough group to get through, and we'll need to be at our best, certainly in those Dortmund games. You know, we've certainly got to win that Dortmund home game to give ourselves a chance to go through, because if we don't, and you've got Real Madrid match days 3 and 4, we'll be almost out of it before you feel like the group's begun. So it's essential that we get off to that winning start, and hopefully we will do. I don't think Dortmund are quite as scary as they were perhaps 1 or 2 years ago. I think they're a slightly different side now since Klopp's left them, but they're still a tough side, and they've still got serious European pedigree to them.
Very much so. And coming back again round to you, Andy, in terms of selections, I think we've been here talked endlessly last season about Pochettino's selections in the Champions League. You just feel this time around he hasn't got the opportunity to maybe experiment because of the nature of the teams that we're playing. We would surely be expecting our best possible 11, regardless of the games we have against Premier League opposition at the weekends, to really see, the best possible players out there for these games.
Well, yeah, this is going to be one of the most interesting things in the Champions League for me this season, is to see how Pochettino approaches it, bearing in mind the league is still going to be just as important, if not more important, with the Wembley factor. It's going to be that little bit tougher to get into the top four this season, so he's still going to need to focus on the league. So will he go again with the rotation in the Champions League? Arguably, if you believe what you read on social media and in the media, we're going to be a little bit stronger come the end of the window, with a few new signings in there, which hopefully will allow him to rotate where he needs to. A few youngsters rumoured to be coming in, so it's looking healthy squad-wise, depending on the business they get done between now and the end of the window. I think a lot of people last season were confused, I think is the right word to use, over the selection. But as a few on this podcast pointed out last season, Pochettino had to prioritise the league. It was key that they got into the Champions League last season, and in the end that worked out. This season's slightly different because of the Wembley factor, and again, they're going to want to finish in that top four to start the new era in the new stadium in the Champions League. So that's going to be really interesting. So it's once again, it's a real tough one for Pochettino, I think, to balance. But I really do think, and I think you've said this also, Ricky, he's going to go. You've got to go, haven't you, with your strongest side against the likes of Real Madrid and Dortmund.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, we've all said it last season, and I'll say it again, you will get found out against these teams. You cannot mess around and pick willy-nilly teams against the likes of Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund. They will tear you apart. We know the quality they've got. Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, just two of them that used to be our own, are over there with Real Madrid. Borussia Dortmund, they've got phenomenal players. We will get found out if we do not pick our best 11. Simple as that. Jace, coming over to you. I'm going to ask the same question to you again. Do you think we're going to see from Pochettino a more methodical approach where it will be our best 11? And as we say, it doesn't matter what Premier League opposition's coming up, it has to be, first and foremost, you pick your best 11 for the Champions League, end of.
Well, I think that has to be. If you've got serious aspirations to try and give yourself a chance to go through the group, it's a group that you can't take chances with, isn't it? And even in that Apoel game, I hope we don't even think, okay, Apoel away, we'll take a few
youngsters,
Carling Cup type players. Yeah, we need, particularly if we've won that Dortmund game, the chance to go to Apoel and win and get 6 points from those first two with Madrid to come. That's the way you want to set the group up, and give ourselves the best chance to go through. And to do that, as you say, you've got to pick your best side.
Yeah,
I tell you what I think is going to be interesting as well, Ricky, is the team that Dortmund in particular are able to field. Obviously, there's rumours of Dembele. He's on strike at the moment, so he's not a happy bunny. So they could be without him.
Just on that, I thought Sky broke today that a deal has been agreed.
Oh, right.
About an hour or so ago, that a deal which ends up being something like 105 million or something for him has been agreed, but we'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting. They're losing one of their best players there. Don't get me wrong, they've got a fantastic squad, but as we've found out in the past, and you could argue that Dortmund are arguably the German Spurs, if you like, in terms of not being able to resist the massive offers from the likes of the Real Madrids and Barcelonas when they come in. Although having said that, not many clubs could, but they're similar sort of size club to Spurs. So losing Dembele, certainly not good for them. Also Aubameyang, lots of rumours still that he might be on his way before the end of the window. So, it could be a slightly different Dortmund team to the one we expect that eventually turn up at Wembley. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And I think, Spurs still strengthening, still got a week or so now to strengthen. So it's certainly going to be interesting between now and next week to see what we go into this campaign with, I think.
Yeah, I just want to bring on to the fact that you look at the Champions League, the games we've got, and Spurs have only got one away match after the Champions League group games. You know, we've got Swansea at home, Huddersfield away, then after that you've got the likes of Liverpool, Crystal Palace, West Brom, Stoke, all at Wembley. The line keeps getting thrown to me, it's not home, it's Wembley. Well, we're going to have to, coming to you, Jace, look at Wembley and, you know, stop referring to it as though it's not home. We know it's not White Hart Lane. We know it's not where we want to be playing. But the reality is, Jace, we've got a minimum of 17, 18 games there in the Premier League. We have to get on with it, Jace.
I've reached the stage now at Wembley where, despite all the moaning about it, you have to get on with it. You can't keep moaning about it. As you say, you've got a season ahead. It was the best option. It was the only option available. I mean, imagine if we'd have had that draw today and been looking forward to playing Real Madrid at MK Dons Stadium. You know, and you put it that way and you think, thank God we are at Wembley. And, you know, just get on with it. It's their home stadium for a year, whether we like it or not. There's so many other things I hear about it that supporters moan at. Oh, it's so difficult to get away from. But, you know, White Hart Lane wasn't exactly easy to get away from, was it? And there's so much negativity. And I just think, you know, hopefully this weekend we get a nice win against Burnley. I think the next home game then is Swansea. So we've got a great chance to get 2 back-to-back wins. And if you win those, hopefully some of the doom and gloom that people have about Wembley starts to lift. It is up to our supporters to really get behind the team at Wembley. It's no good us just sitting there moaning and groaning about it, other than in 1 or 2 little blocks where the singing section is. You know, accept it. We're at Wembley for a year. Get on with it.
Yeah. And again, Andy, I'm sure you're going to echo those thoughts. We have to get on with it, don't we? There's no point moaning and groaning. Everyone voted to decide. I say voted. Everyone spoke majority that they wanted Wembley. So now we've got it. We have to embrace it. And, you know, it's just hopefully, fingers crossed for this just one season.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you know, I think we saw on Sunday there were a few teething problems, but we've got what we've got to remember as well is the club are getting used to Wembley as well, you know, in terms of things like the drum that we saw, you know, so there's going to be mistakes made. There's going to be a few teething problems. So we've just got to get on with it. We know we're going to be there for a year. We've got a fantastic stadium to look forward to at the end of it. Let's just enjoy this season wherever we play, you know. Some great noise was made at Wembley on Sunday. I thought, you know, let's just get on with it. Let's enjoy it. Let's embrace it and really make a night of it. Make it as intimidating as I'm sure we're going to face at the likes of Dortmund and other places. It is a fantastic stadium. And if you asked many other teams, you know, whether they'd like to play a season at Wembley, they'd bite your hand off, you know. So, look, it's not ideal, but very little in life is. Let's enjoy it, let's get on with it, and let's support the team.
Just on the Wembley issue, Rick, I think, you know, the other cup draw that we might talk about later, I think that's probably the biggest impact at Wembley, in that, particularly at an early stage in a competition, of a domestic competition, when you get a lower league side. And now you look at the fixtures and we've got Champions League games and you think, the Carabao Cup team, if you think back to the Gillingham game at White Hart Lane, the type of team we picked there, and we would probably like to field that against, particularly if it's Barnsley, for instance, in that game. But what you'll be faced with Barnsley is that they'll see that as a day at Wembley. They'll probably sell out their 10% allocation, so they'll bring 9,000 fans down. And if they're going to bring that down, they'll bring their strongest possible team. And that makes it much harder to field a traditional Carling Cup team, because you don't want to be knocked out at home with a much weakened side against a side like Barnsley. And so I think, you know, the Wembley effect will have a much bigger impact. We are definitely the number one draw that everyone outside the Premier League wants in a domestic cup, and they all want us to play us at Wembley because of the Wembley effect.
Yeah, we're going to discuss, Jace, after the break very quickly, the priority in terms of the cup competitions. But for the moment, after this very short break, we're going to be looking at the Carabao Cup draw and also players that could potentially improve Tottenham during this Champions League campaign. We'll be back after this. Hello guys, welcome back to the E-Spurs Extra Time Special. So guys, you've sent in some questions for this special podcast, which we're going to take around the table tonight. We're going to go across first to you, Jace. We've got a question here from a friend of the show who's been on previously, James McCarthy, who says, who fills in for Dele Alli when he serves his ban? It's a good point, because it's 3 games, Jace, we know that he won't be available for Tottenham. So tell us, Jace, who's the lucky man to replace him in midfield?
Easy selection, you just bring Moussa Sissoko in.
just into midfield, Jace. Yeah, nice and easy.
It just slots in seamlessly. No, I mean seriously, the only logical way to do it is particularly if we play with the three at the back, is that Heung-min Son comes in for Dele Alli. Fingers crossed, with the type of draw we've got tonight, we can bring in one or two more. Ross Barkley's got to be sitting at home thinking, I definitely want to be a part of a Champions League draw that sees me have a chance to play in the Bernabeu against Real Madrid. So hopefully one or two things like that happen, and maybe even I see we've dropped out of the race for Keita today or something like that, or whether Martial wants to come and be a part of it or whatever. But hopefully we will get more options to put in instead of Dele Alli for those games before that transfer window shuts.
Fingers crossed. Andy, come over to you. Do you think, from a personal perspective, we could potentially see a brand new number 8 in there?
Yeah, I do. And I think Jay's right there. When you look at the squad, in terms of options going forward, they are light. You've got Sissoko who could come in, but there's rumours even about Sissoko today that he could be going on loan to Trabzonspor. Although I'm sure many of us would rather see a permanent deal for him, bless him. But I think it's certainly looking like there, and that's what makes me think if we do loan him or sell him, then you've got to bring someone in, and that's what also makes me think that Ross Barkley's pretty much nailed on to come, because he's the one that's been talked about all summer. Everything points towards him. There's a few Spurs legends who've come out and said that he wants to come to Spurs. So I think we'll probably see Barkley come in as an option there. But even so, you look at all of the other sort of top 4 teams, if you like, and they've all got maybe 2 or 3 options who can come in that position. So still looking a bit light, but I think we will do business before the end of the window, get Barkley in there as an option when Ali's not there, because obviously you've got Heung-min Son. I think he's a fantastic option there. I think, fast becoming one of my favourite Spurs players, Son, and 21 goals last season. You take that out of any side and it's going to affect the team. So let's get Barkley in as another option, and that adds, I think, real strength to the side.
Yeah.
Even if you bring in Ross Barkley, you're definitely, certainly for that first Dortmund game, you're talking about a player that won't have kicked a ball since May last year. And so even if we do sign Barkley, we know he's had an operation during the summer and he's now supposedly out with another injury, although I don't know if that's one of these mystery injuries, pre-transfer windows that instantly clears up as soon as the window shuts type of thing. But, we got to face the fact that he hasn't kicked a ball, and so certainly for Dortmund, I doubt very much that he'd be fully fit anyway himself. Yeah,
the other thing that we was talking about, mate, just a moment ago was Dele Alli. I mean, if missing that game at the Bernabeu and sitting on your sofa at home watching it on telly isn't enough of a lesson to Dele Alli, then I don't know what is. So I'm sure he'll learn from that and come back a better player.
No, great point. Really, really great point raised there. And just quickly, lads, on the whole transfer situation, I mean, I've got to say, just on the back of James's question, if that group stage draw, coming over to you, Jace, does not push Tottenham to go out and invest in this squad, then I'm not sure what does. I mean, Jace, from your perspective, can you be brutally honest and say to us, what else do you think Spurs need? Ross Barkley, and who else for you would improve this Tottenham team?
Well, I think we want 2 attacking players. I think I see Barkley more as a Dembele style player. I don't see him as an out-and-out number 10. I see him playing a little bit deeper, so I do want another genuine attacking option. It'll be great for me to see Asensio, because I kept talking about Asensio last year and suddenly we'll be facing Asensio. But I mean, a player of that ilk would have been fantastic for us, and I still hope we can do something along those lines, albeit it certainly won't be him.
Andy, for you, are you in agreement there with Jace, or do you think we may need something different?
No, I agree completely. I think we do need a couple of attacking options in there. I mean, you're watching it on Sunday, and I mean, the most obvious fault in the side was that we weren't able to bring on anyone to change the game, and dare I say it, the player that I think would make an amazing difference to this side, a bit of skill, a bit of pace, is a player like Willian. Just had a fantastic game, and that's exactly the type of player I think we need. A bit painful for Spurs fans to hear that, I know, but when you look at his game and you look at the pace and skill that he's got, we do. Sometimes we're really efficient passing that ball around. We've got some fantastic players in there, but we do sometimes lack that creativity, that bit of skill And even, it's not going to win you games necessarily, but even someone to get bums off seats, sometimes, like a skillful player who can do that. So I think we do lack someone like that. I think defensively, central defence, we're fine going forward now with Sanchez coming in. Just the fullbacks obviously is going to be a big issue going forward with Rose. Still not sure what's happening with him. We're going to need to sort that out before the end of the window. Is Aurier coming in? We still don't know. So that's still going to be a big issue before the end of the season. We're going to miss the pace from Rose, I think, once he goes. So there's a lot really still to sort out within a week at Spurs in the transfer window. But I agree with Jace completely. A couple of attacking options in there. The fullbacks also. And I think then we'll be pretty much fine, between now and January. I don't think anyone will come in January, but this season I think we'll be fine if we get those players in.
You mentioned there, Andy, going into the last week of a transfer window, all these kind of things. That's not like Spurs, is it? We're normally sorted by now, aren't we?
No, only Spurs. Only Spurs. I mean, the one thing is that I'm pleased about this season is the players that we're being linked to and that look like coming in. They all look fantastic options. They all look real quality players. I mean, quite often, we are linked with players and we get players in like the Ngis, the Nkudus, the Sissokos on the last day of the season where you're not quite sure, what they're going to offer. But with the players that we're being linked to and the players that have come in, they all look real quality. So if they do happen, and I know it's a huge if with Spurs, but if they do happen, then I'm certainly excited anyway.
Yeah, I think we all are. Fingers crossed, like I say, it's going to be hopefully a very exciting end to the window.
Just really quickly on that as well, as frustrating as the window has been, and as much as I don't want to look at other sides, I think if you compare us, the two closest teams to us, if you like, you have to take Man United, Man City and Chelsea out because they'll go mega money. And you look at Liverpool, Woolwich and ourselves, all three of us have had real troubles adding to our squads this year. And I don't think that's a coincidence. None of us can get the players that take us to the next level, because the players that take you to the next level want the mega money that us three clubs can't necessarily do. And I think it is a problem. And, Arsenal brought in Lacazette, but then they had to offset that with a free transfer of Kolasinac. And Liverpool have only brought in Salah. So, the clubs that we're competing with are having just as much troubles doing deals as we are.
Good point. No, fair point raised there, Jace. Fair point. Very quickly, Jace, we're going to move it on to the next question of the night. So, Andy, coming round to you, we've got a question here from Ben Bowman, who says, if this Tottenham Hotspur squad played Real Madrid today, would the team be stronger than the one that beat the reigning champions Inter 3-1 at the Lane?
I was hoping I wouldn't get this question actually, but do you know what, Rick? I was thinking about this earlier when I saw. That's okay. I was thinking about this earlier when I saw the post on social media, and you guys know how much I love that side.
Of course, yep.
From the Champions League campaign 2010-11, fantastic side going forward. However, having seen what this side has achieved over the last season, I think as a unit, it's certainly stronger. In terms of individuals, you obviously had the likes of the Bale and the Modric at the time. Bale could change a game on his own, as we know, could win a game from nothing. So I think I'd say individual players-wise, maybe we haven't got that one world-class, what I'd call world-class attacker in the side, sort of number 8, number 9 player I'm talking about, not a Kane. Certainly, I would now class as being up there as world class. But I don't think we've got a Bale type player who can change the game on his own. But the team as a unit is certainly stronger than that team we had against Real Madrid previously.
Jace, coming over to you. We'll ask the same question for you on that one. What do you reckon?
Well, I think you also have to throw into the equation, I think, as good as Inter were then as defending champions, Real Madrid are even better now than Inter were. So I think we were definitely a better side then, but you're right, against Inter you had Bale, and Bale had 2 astonishing performances, didn't he? That really set the world alight. And I think if you put Bale in this side, we certainly wouldn't have to worry about Danny Rose at left wing back if you had Gareth Bale playing that side. And I think that's the big difference. And on Saturday you take Ben Davies out and you play Gareth Bale over there. Then I'd fancy us taking on anyone with the current side. Yeah. But don't forget, when the questioner says that, let's not forget one of those games to Inter Milan we did lose. The Bale hat-trick kind of masked the fact that we lost that game, but we did actually lose. to Inter Milan that night.
No, like you agree there. I mean, some people do forget that due to the nature of that comeback. Guys, we're going to move it on. Final question of the night is from Willie at Fact Nkudu, I believe that tag handle is, and he says, no team will sit back. How do you think we will perform against open teams coming to Wembley? Very good question, that one. Going to come round to you, Jace, on that firstly, because we can also, within that, talk about the Barnsley game, which is what you mentioned previously, about teams coming to Wembley, and for them it's a cup final before it actually even is the final itself.
Well, I think that if you take Real Madrid, I think the difference is, whilst they'll come at us, they'll also dominate the ball, and that's something that we won't be used to. And most games, even against Chelsea, you see it, we actually dominate the ball. And it's strange, we've seen teams like Arsenal when they've played Bayern and Barcelona, and they're used to dominating the ball, suddenly play against those sides, and it is so difficult to play. And we might actually kind of have to try and park the bus ourselves to give ourselves a chance. The one thing you can't get against Real Madrid and Dortmund is, and we saw it even with Chelsea, didn't we? If you get caught with men downfield and you lose the ball and they break, you're in big, big trouble, and Real Madrid are devastating at doing that. I mean, they've just done Barcelona 5-1 over 2 legs, and they scored about 3 or 4 goals straight on the break, where they are so dangerous that if you lose the ball on the edge of their box, 5 seconds later, you're fishing the ball out your own net, and that's going to be the problem. It's not so much that they'll play the open game, it's that they'll suck you in and then they'll just brutally annihilate you on the break. So I think, when you play the likes of Real and Dortmund, and they are such good counter-attacking sides, you've got to have real clever game craft. We'll have to play tactically in a way that perhaps Tottenham teams, even under Pochettino, aren't used to playing. We'll almost have to play like Chelsea did against us to ever give ourselves the best chance against them. That will be the key to those games.
Andy, do you go along with that? Do you echo those thoughts?
Yeah, I think you've got to. I mean, you're looking at arguably the toughest game we're going to play, 2 games we're going to play this season against Real Madrid. Whatever side they put out, it's a real tough fixture. I agree with, I think the questioner said there about a more open side. We do tend to struggle against sides that up the bus as Chelsea did on. We do tend to struggle to open them up. As I say, it's still crucial for us in that top 4. And when you think it'd be that much harder than it was last season because of the Wembley factor, if you like, I don't want to keep harping on about that, but it is going to be tougher. So I think it'd be a great night. Let's hope for a win. That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's going to be a tough game, whatever way you look at it. But one, I think we've all got to enjoy, haven't we? Because as we say, this is what footballers play football for, and this is what us fans watch the game for.
Exactly that point right there. And just to finish up, chaps, just in terms of priorities now. So we've discussed briefly about the Carabao Cup, the Barnsley game. Champions League, we've obviously seen the teams we're facing. We can't afford to not pick our most strongest 11. So therefore, coming over to you, Jace, in terms of where priorities lay this season, I think we've all discussed on this podcast the need to win that trophy, to get that first trophy under Maurizio Pochettino for this young squad. With that being the case, are we going to treat this Carabao Cup as a tournament for the kids, or are we going to treat it as an opportunity to get that first trophy on board under this manager and this set of players?
Well, I think with the draw that we've got today from Champions League, and you look at the Premier League fixtures around it, you can't possibly play everyone week in, week out. So there will be rotation. I think you saw Pochettino's comments last week, didn't he say, where the FA Cup and Carabao Cup aren't particularly important to him. And so I think that Barnsley game, as I say, or Barnsley or Derby, whichever one it is, I think you will see Walker Peters, you will see Carter Vickers, you will see, some of those players. If we get the boy in from Manchester City, Jadon Sancho's, you'll see players like that, maybe the Keziah Sterlings, because with the squad depth that we've got at the moment, it's not exactly easy to keep those players going every single game. And as unfortunate as people find it, I think Pochettino's priorities and the club's priorities, certainly in this period going into that new stadium, is to stay within that top 4. And that, for them, is the be-all and end-all at the moment.
I know, Jace, you always seem to maintain that stance on it. Coming over to you, Andy, are those your thoughts as well? Where's your priorities lying in terms of this season?
I think we as Spurs fans have got to accept now that, and it pains me to say this, but the FA Cup, the League Cup, they now come way down the pecking order. FA Cup's so important to Spurs, and I've written about this many, many times, spoken to you lads about this many, many times, how important that cup is to Spurs. And it's hard for anybody outside to understand that. But when you've grown up watching Spurs win the FA Cup, you know the history behind Spurs in the FA Cup. You know how important it is to the fans. So I think that's why Pochettino's tactics and rotations last season, the season before, perhaps confused some Spurs fans and it made it look like he didn't care about the competition. Whereas I think we've got to now accept that the Champions League is so important. Finishing in that top 4 is so important that he can do nothing but rotate in those other cups, the FA Cup and the League Cup. And we've got to now see it as a chance to see some of the younger players, I think. Times have changed. Football's moved on. I'll always love the FA Cup. I'll always want Spurs to win the FA Cup. I always hope to see the Spurs captain, whoever that may be, lifting that trophy again at Wembley. But what do we want as Spurs fans? Do we want to see Spurs in the Champions League? And if the answer is yes, then I think we've got to accept that the FA Cup and the League Cup have got to be used for rotation, bring in some of the younger players. And it's a great chance, for those players to experience Wembley, as I'm sure they will do against Derby or Barnsley. And, it's a great chance for them to get some experience before they get into the first team. So let's look at it like that. Let's use it to our advantage, if anything, and let's enjoy it.
I think that's a great way to end this podcast. Let's enjoy it. Guys, what a fabulous, fabulous Champions League experience is going to be coming again. Honestly, looking so much forward to the journey. Jace, thanks so much for coming on tonight's E-Spurs Extra Time Special. Really enjoyed having you.
No problem, mate, and I can't wait to fly in for the games themselves. Back there for the Swansea game, and from there on in, certainly through to that Real Madrid home game. So, good to be back. Good to be back going to games as well.
Yeah, and like I say, look forward to having you over here, Jace. And Andy, thank you so much for making your long-awaited return. Been a real pleasure having you on the show.
No, I really enjoyed it, Rick, and great to speak to you lads again. And, I listen every week, as I'm sure most of the listeners do, and you guys do a great job. So, fantastic. And thanks for having me on.
Don't be silly. Like I say, don't leave it as long as this, and been a real pleasure having you. Guys, we will be back discussing all things Tottenham Hotspur after Burnley, where fingers crossed it will be an elusive win that we need over there. As always, as we roll into Burnley on Sunday, back at Wembley, come on you Spurs!
I suppose